Does anyone have any questions so far? I'd like to do this with as much Q&A as possible. So if anyone has a question, someone just asked, can child support be waived if the parties agree? And the answer is no. That's the simple answer. And the reason that the answer is no is because the legislature really, the idea is that child support belongs to the child. It's not for the parents. It's something that the parents can't waive because it actually belongs to the child. And it kind of goes against public policy to just say, well, the child should be getting child support, but we're just going to waive it because the parents say we're going to waive it. And so they, in the legal world, it's looked upon as being like in violation of public policy to waive it. However, that doesn't mean that there's not a way to kind of make that work to where it's a wash or kind of evened out. So if the income levels are very close or comparable, you can manipulate the guidelines a little bit to basically get it to as close to zero as possible. And if the child support comes out to be like a nominal number, like I would say $50 a month or less or something, and the parties want to, you know, manipulate the numbers to just call it a wash, there's ways to do that. Another way of kind of making it so there isn't money going from one parent to the other, and I've done this quite a bit, is if one parent wants to contract themselves to paying for 100% of the child's medical, childcare, extracurriculars, there's things that a parent can say, okay, I am going to on paper contract myself to being responsible for all these things, so I'm paying it directly to those service providers, and in lieu, I'm not going to be paying child support from myself to the other parent. So the short answer is no, it can't be waived, but there's ways to kind of work around that so that the parties can work something out that they're comfortable with by agreement. The court can never waive it if you go in front of the judge. Someone just asked, what should I do if one parent isn't paying child support? So I'm actually going to talk about that in just a few minutes once we kind of cover what is child support, how do we calculate it, then we'll talk about how to establish it and how to enforce it. So we were talking about the fact that it includes income, right? And it's important to know also that in Florida, it's the net income. And just in case you need a refresher, net income is the income that is paid to you after taxes and after all the deductions. So it's the take-home pay, basically. Another important thing to know is, so if we look at the gross income, right, like before your taxes, before your deductions are taken out, that's your gross. Then what's allowed to be deducted from that to get to your net income are your standard federal income taxes, Social Security taxes, Medicare, your standard deductions. On top of that, if you're paying into a retirement plan or a pension, it has to be that that's mandatory retirement for it to be deducted from your gross. So an example of this would be firefighters, police officers, teachers. Those guys usually have mandatory retirement. It's not optional. That has to come out of their pay and it's deducted. That can be included as a deduction to get to their net income. If you are working elsewhere and you just voluntarily pay into your 401k every month, or you're paying into some retirement plan, that's voluntary. That would not be included as a deduction for you. Another deduction that's allowed is mandatory union dues, and it falls in the same category usually for like teachers, firefighters, police officers, government employees, that kind of thing. So we get from your gross income down to your net, right? Gross minus deductions, and then we get your net. The net income, the timeshare, the overnights, health insurance considerations. Oh, and I forgot to mention actually that Health insurance for the parent is also obviously going to be an allowable deduction.